So I don't want people to think about intake as like there's a one size fits all or there's one right way to do it. It really depends on the needs of your law firm at the time because those needs change. Your clientele, how many leads are you getting? Where are your leads coming from? So of course marketing affects intake, but what's your staffing look like? What's your call volume look like? All of these things are kind of necessary in order to make good decisions. So I guess the first thing you want to do is understand your law firm's needs in terms of how many clients do I need? Do I have more than I need? Do I have less than I need? Do I have enough calls? Do I need more calls? So just be very curious, answer questions, collect data, and then you can begin to experiment.
Is your intake process getting your firm the results it needs? Is your intake process creating barriers for potential clients? Could it be refined or possibly totally reworked? This week, we're joined by Billie Tarascio, successful attorney and co-author of Tiger Tactics, Powerful Strategies for Winning Law Firms. Billie is a master of the intake process and will give us an insightful breakdown of her own process, how she makes it easier for her own clients, her employees, and herself as an owner. We also talk about working backwards from the total volume your firm needs to succeed to create and perfect your own intake process. We're going to cover a lot of ground, including running sales and specials on initial consultations, creating referral programs, optimizing your advertising spending, and even reframing your intake team as advocates. Make sure you stick around to the end to hear Billie challenge me on my own approach to intake. This interview has a lot of great actionable tips for you and your firm. Let's get to it. I'm John Strohmeyer, and this is the 5-Star Counsel Podcast. The market for legal services is shifting, and lawyers who don't adapt will be left behind. This podcast gives you a competitive edge in today's market by sharing the client service lessons you probably didn't learn in law school or in law practice. Let's start the show. This episode of 5-Star Counsel is sponsored by Text Expander. Supercharge your team with the power of Text Expander. Now, I've been using Text Expander for years, and it's a huge help. I save hours every week by using the snippets to consistently generate pre-written text for communications. This saves me from being lashed to the keyboard, coming up with the right words, and then typing them correctly. I've typed it correctly once, so it's ready whenever I type the short abbreviation I chose. Text Expander does the rest of the typing for me. Now, I started using text replacement years ago to streamline and speed up my time entry. I had a few snippets that included most of the words that I needed for any entry. I'd enter that snippet and then delete the words I didn't need. The best part was not having to type the same phrases over and over again. Telephone conference with, office conference with, preparation for same, and on and on and on. I'm sure you've got the same stock phrases that you can type blindfolded and don't care to ever think about again. Ultimately, it means you can do more with the same resources. Less repetition, fewer errors, and greater consistency. Text Expander is available on Mac, Windows, Chrome, iPhone, and iPad, so you can use your snippets across your programs and platforms. For example, I can respond to a LinkedIn message on my phone, iPad, or desktop with one Calendly link, and all I have to remember is my custom abbreviation. 5-Star counselors can get 20% off their first year by following the link in the show notes or heading to 5starcounsel.com/textexpander. Hey, Billie, thanks for joining me today.
Hi, John. Great to be here. Good to see you.
Oh my gosh. I mean, it has been a year and a half since I think I've seen probably half the guests who's been on the podcast at the last tech show. That's what it was. It was tech show where everybody saw everybody for the last time. And now we're looking forward to, I've got a number of people who are just looking forward to, we get to see each other again, hopefully in October for Max Law, which you're speaking at, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely. I had forgotten about that, but you're right. Tech Show was like 2 weeks before the world shut down.
And, here we are 16 months later, we're getting back into the swing of things. And I'm sure you've probably seen things are warming back up. Not just temperature wise, because we both live in unbearably hot climates, but business is starting to pick up again in ways that are new. I'm used to a summer slump, but that means we've got to focus on intake. And I thought, who better to help guide us on how do we make intake better and easier for employees, clients, and owners then you, Billie Tarascio. So Billie, with that wind up, where do we go on intake?
That's such a broad question. And intake is a popular conversation. And the reason that it's popular is not just because it's shiny and new, it's because it makes a massive difference in your bottom line. It's probably one of the easiest, fastest things that you can tweak in your law firm and see direct and immediate results. So that's the good news.
Well, then what's the bad news? So we can at least get that out of the way.
What's the bad news? Well, there's a million different tweaks you can make. So I've been experimenting with intake almost, constantly for the last 3 to 5 years, because you can always change something and you can always try something different. And the needs of your business are going to change over time. And that means you can change intake to meet those needs. So I don't want people to think about intake as like there's a one size fits all or there's one right way to do it. It really depends on the needs of your law firm at the time, because those needs change. Your clientele, how many leads are you getting? Where are your leads coming from? So of course, marketing affects intake, but what's your staffing look like? What's your call volume look like? All of these things are kind of necessary in order to make good decisions. So I guess the first thing you want to do is understand your law firm's needs in terms of how many clients do I need? Do I have more than I need? Do I have less than I need? Do I have enough calls? Do I need more calls? So just be very curious, answer questions, collect data, and then you can begin to experiment.
That I like that, because what you were really getting at is how many does the firm need to get in the door? And we're starting from that. We're looking at what is the result, and we can back up from there to start figuring out what our process needs to look like. Not, I have 2 people doing intake right now. How do I make sure that they're doing full-time intake? Or I only have 1 person and he's overwhelmed. How do I get him to not be overwhelmed?
Right. Absolutely true. Let's start with what our law firm needs. So I have a growing family law firm in Phoenix. And what that means is I'll hire and then I'll have new lawyers that are getting trained, and they won't have a full caseload. And so I'll need an influx of new clients. And then once they get full and my whole law firm is full, then I'll need to hire more lawyers and I'll need to slow down the number of new cases coming in. So there's always different needs of the law firm. So one of the things that I frequently do is when I've got, lawyers that I've hired that don't have full caseloads, but they've now been trained and they need full caseloads, is I'll run a consultation special where, typically we charge $250 for consultations, but I'll drop it down to $99. That always increases the number of consultations that occur for my law firm. And as long as I have people who are trained, who can convert those consultations into clients at a good rate, I'm not wasting time and money. That's the other thing you have to look at. Do you have somebody in your office who knows how to convert consultations to clients? And if you don't, if that number's too low, then don't spend another dollar on marketing. Don't spend another dollar on intake. Figure out how to make sure you've got somebody who could convert those potential clients into clients.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there. Before I do, I want to make sure I understand your terminology, because I'm overlaying my process. And I want to make sure that we're using the words similarly, because I'm sure at least one listener will say, oh, that sounds right. And then we're going to go off and we're going to use terms and we'll get them lost. So the way I set things up, there's an initial free phone call with me.
Mm-hmm.
Where people, look, the sound of my voice may run you off. You may not like, any of a dozen things that may run somebody off. And the nature of my practice is that I'm pretty involved, and, I'm talking about your personal planning issues, similar to what you're doing. And I've found clients don't want to sign up for a planner who they have not actually talked to.
Mm-hmm.
From there, we're going to a paid consult where we're sitting down for 2-ish hours to go through everything and come up with their plan. And then at the end of that, that's where we're saying, like, here's what a full representation goes on. So initial call, strategy session, a consultation, I think is what you would call it, and then representation. Does that line up with what you would call?
Yes. So the initial call, I would call an intake.
Okay.
So that's not done with lawyers in my firm, but that's akin. You've got your initial call, which I'll call the intake call. Then you've got your initial meeting, which I call the consultation. You call the strategy session. At the end of that consultation or strategy session, they should be signing up to be a client.
Right.
If you want
right.
them.
Okay. So a 3-step process where we're getting things moving to the same place. And so the way I look at this, the intake call, which I think we're going to agree that is what I will call it for the rest of this. The intake call, I'm there, but the most important part is let's get people either yes or no, does it make sense to keep moving forward? Get the basic information. Can we do the work? Should we do the work? Do they like us enough to potentially pay us? Does it sound like what you're looking for there?
Yeah. So the most important thing in that intake call is most of the time in family law, when people are calling a law firm, they know what a family law problem looks like. They know what a divorce looks like. They know what a modification looks like. They might be determining whether or not they want to hire an attorney, or they might be determining whether or not they want to hire and pay to talk to my law firm. Usually they're not calling for some other reason. They're either determining, do I want a lawyer at all? And do I want to work with this firm? Maybe can I get some more information about the process because I'm thinking about divorce? So the intake's job is to answer the phone, be friendly, form a connection, and get them scheduled for consultation. I want my intake team to collect as few pieces of information as is necessary to get them in for a consultation. I want to remove barriers to hiring at every single step of the way. And that starts with intake. So some people make their potential clients fill out massive intake forms. And that can serve as sort of the same thing that the consultation fee can serve as, a way to weed people out, to make people invested. I'd prefer to get paid for my time. So I don't require lots of intake forms. I want basic information, payment, and then consultation.
Right. That's interesting because I've had barriers in the past. I've broken some of them down. I've put up other ones. And I do want some information. Like the initial call, that intake call with me, they're pushed out a few days because it ends up giving somebody on my staff who is not a lawyer time to call them, reach out and say, hey, we saw this. We're just reaching out. Like 15 minutes before we started recording, a new web chat came in. I was able to take a look at it, say, this person makes sense, forward it on to somebody in my staff and say, give her a call. Here's the rough idea of what we should get out of this. I mean, the potential client lines up with probably what we can do and will probably be a good fit. But this way we're showing, hey, you didn't just talk to a robot on the website. There is a live human here who can reach back, get the basic information, because in that basic information call, they're also sussing out, like, is this a good fit? They have the red flags for that call. So I've got my intake call, but there's also the pre-call to try and weed people off, because what I found is my marketing is getting more effective and we're getting more people showing up. The problem is not everybody is a good fit for us. And so kind of keeping the broad strokes of the strategy there, I added the blocker of have somebody on staff call and get information. If they're not a good fit, like, that's okay. We've got two options.
Okay.
Send them somewhere else or adjust how we, create an option that does make sense for them that probably doesn't involve me.
So, John, I want to push back on your process.
Go for it.
So the chat comes in, your staff reaches out, they collect information, and then they schedule a free call with you.
The call has already been scheduled with me.
Through the website?
Through the website.
Okay, so the website says schedule a free 15-minute consultation with John. They schedule through an online scheduling, and then your people reach out.
Yes.
Is that the only way that your potential clients come in?
No.
What if they just call you?
If they just call the main line that is given out, then the people who answer the phones will schedule them. Same process happens there. If they email, we send them back, reply with, here's text expander with Calendly link so that we're starting to get that information. Again, scheduling, and we're waiting until they've taken the step of scheduling something to reach out, and then we're being proactive to go get the information from them.
Okay. I think you've put a lot of barriers in place for people to sign up to meet with you. And I think you are probably wasting your time with your free 15-minute call. Because if you've got people, so if you've got people vetting your potential clients already, like they're doing that screening work, why aren't people paying to meet with you? Also, why are you making people figure out how to schedule on their own? Like your clients are estate planning clients, right?
Right.
You've got old rich people. They want to be able to have you work for them the way that they want you to work for them. That means if they want to call you up and have your secretary, I say secretary because they're old and,
Sure.
and schedule for them, they don't want to use an online scheduler. Why are you making them use an online scheduler?
Well, I mean, so I will push back on that part. If they call, the person answering the phone has Calendly and they're just saying, this
They're
is the
doing
next
it.
time. Yeah,
Got
they're
it.
doing that. Yeah.
Okay, so they do have options. They can either have
Yeah.
somebody do it for them, they can do it. Okay.
So just to pull the curtain back, everything like Calendly is the major trigger for us in Zapier. And
Mhm.
so once that happens, it means we've got an email and we've got a phone number for them.
Mhm.
That triggers a lot of downstream things in Basecamp and Pipedrive and Kartra and all the
Mhm.
other dozen things we have going, so
Mhm.
that we're necessarily forcing everybody through Calendly, even if they're not explicitly using Calendly.
I got it. I totally agree. That's how we do it too. We use
Okay.
Acuity, but it's the same thing. Our entire intake form is in Acuity. So in
Yep.
order to schedule a consultation, they have to put in the opposing party so we can do a conflict check.
Yep.
And they have to put in all of the information needed to meet with us for a consultation. So basically, the only thing that we've done is we've cut out the step in between your free consult and your consultation, or your
Right.
free intake call and your consultation.
Right. And what I'm taking away of the thing I need to do is, hey, intake person who's calling, the pre-call, I just need to make sure they know they can offer the engagement letter in the strategy session.
Totally. Absolutely.
See, again, the only reason I have this podcast is so I can get free consulting from smart people.
Well, and this is exactly how like people should be looking at their intake. It's just little piece by piece. Like
Right.
what's the piece? How can I tweak this piece? What might and maybe it doesn't work all the time. Maybe your people really really want a 15-minute free time with you, but I think you can probably accomplish that with videos.
And that's part of why we have everything on YouTube, or not everything. We have lots of things on YouTube, constantly adding there. We've replaced the web chat on the estate planning page at Strohmeyer Law with a video chat. It is not live. It's basically a version of Typeform called Video
Mhm.
Ask. And this
Mhm.
is the part where I'm like, why did I tell everybody my new secrets thing? And it's like, well, look, everybody's going to use it eventually. It's
Mhm.
really neat. You set up the same sort of logic and it will get people to the right version of the right engagement letter if you
Mhm.
follow the steps. And it's all on video. And there's still the option for, hey, I still, I went through web chat. I would still like to talk to live human John before handing over dollars. And there's still the option for that.
Got it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Super. This call's paying off. And so I guess the other thing I would add to pushback, only to say it hasn't been a problem. We've got people coming in, and estate planning has always been a slow process. You rarely have the urgency of a court deadline. And
Mhm.
so people, talking to a client this morning, it's been a month that she's had her drafts.
Mhm.
And John, I'm so sorry. I know it takes forever. She's right in the middle of the fat part of the curve of, you're fine. Please don't worry. We will see you on Friday to sign documents anyway.
Yeah. What you said right now is really important. If it's working for your law firm, don't tweak anything. If you're making as much money as you want to make, if you have as many clients as you want, who cares if your intake is optimized the same way some other firm is? Like, intake should serve you, not the other way around.
Exactly. If you're listening to this podcast, you and I own our own firms because, among other things, we had thoughts about how we run our practice and how we would like to work. And I'm guessing in large part, you didn't like any of your other options of where
Yeah.
you were working.
I didn't
It's
even
the same.
consider other options. Like, this is a blast.
Yeah. Yeah. Just every time I think about it, well, I could go back and it's like, no, they're not going to like it when I tell them we need to sign up for Typeform and they're certainly not going to understand Zapier.
Right. Right. Yeah, the other really like important thing here is that if you use something like a Calendly or Acuity, you can use this as a data collection tool. If you run all of your intakes through a similar process, not similar, the same process, then you have a tool that you can use to determine how many people are contacting you and where are they contacting you from.
Right. And we've started analyzing our Calendly data to
Mm-hmm.
figure out, these are the calls that are coming in on a weekly basis. Does it just feel higher or
Mhm.
is it actually higher?
Mhm.
Like I've added different Calendly links for different pages on the
Mhm.
website. So if you sign up on the estate planning page, it's only going to ask you estate planning questions. If you're on a probate page, it's going to ask you probate questions. Where did the person die? Do you have the will? Do you have the original will?
Yeah.
Certain radio button yes, no, or this applies, this doesn't apply questions.
Mhm.
Again, optimize for getting them through. We can get the bigger pieces, kind of the fine grained detail that may change what we do later,
Mhm.
but get them in so that we can start talking to them.
Yeah, the other thing that I would really encourage people to do is to backtrack, with the clients that hire you. And this feels like a huge job, but just start with who hired you and then find out how they got to your firm. You are probably wasting money on advertising. I tell you that because I am wasting money on advertising and I have been wasting money on advertising forever, forever. And there are certain things that you do that are getting you business and you're probably not spending enough time or money on those things and you're probably throwing away money on other things and the best way to figure that out is by starting with who hired me.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I know from looking at our Google Analytics, it's well over 80% of our web traffic is from people who either typed in the website or Googled my name and got there. There is a smaller percentage of people who've just randomly Googled estate planning attorney and then they're sifting through reviews before they get to us.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we don't spend anything on advertising because most of it's coming from referrals. And so we are optimizing and always kind of building out how do we take better care of our referral sources.
Yeah.
And it took me a while to figure this out. But, I'm going to put aside lawyer ethics. This is not that. But I actually have I have clients with multiple projects. My clients, with scare quotes, since this is an audio medium, people can't see. My clients are the financial advisors, family attorneys, CPAs, and I do multiple projects for each of those folks, the Smith family and the Jones family. Legal ethics wise, I know that's not the right thing. We're not treating it that way. But, if I take better care of those referral sources and they're the kind of continuing client, it doesn't mean I don't take care of the actual clients, but those referral sources are where most of the business comes from. I mean,
Right.
just beyond leaving lion share, probably 85% plus without having looked at the last month's numbers.
Absolutely. Without a doubt, Arizona just changed the ethical rules to allow fee splitting and therefore referral fees. And so for the first time, we've been able to institute a very systematic referral program. And so for every single person that is referred or it comes into modern law now, one of the things I recently did that was an interesting tweak is I renamed my intake people to legal advocates, family law legal advocates. And they not only just do intake, but they also do our client check-ins throughout the case, and then they collect NPS scores at the end. So calling them a family law advocate really made sense, from beginning to end. At the beginning, it's, you really want to tell your story to an advocate. You don't want to tell your story to an intake person.
Right.
So it starts from the very beginning of really inviting. And then it also really allows me to invest in my intake people and giving them information to make them be able to advocate. And they are competent, college educated people and that they want to know how to do that. So back to the point. So one of the things they now ask every incoming potential client is, how did you hear from us? The reason we ask is we have a referral program. And if somebody referred you to modern law, then we're going to give them $200 and we're going to give you $100. And if you happen to refer people to us in the future, then we'll make sure you get that $200 and we'll give them a $100 discount. Why do we do that? We want them to search their brain and figure out who sent them to us. Because it's so easy to just be like, why are you asking me where I found you? What a pain.
Right.
Online.
Yeah.
But if you're going to get $100,
Yeah.
if you can think about your friend's neighbor who referred you, then you're going to try harder. And then I get to go thank your friend's neighbor, and she or he is going to be a lot more willing to send me more business because I'm giving them $200.
Interesting. And so when you're giving them $100, is that actually just a statement credit, or instead of the $250 consultation fee, it's now $150?
No, it gets paid out after 90 days of them being a client.
Okay.
So it's only for actual bona fide, retained clients. It doesn't just come off the consult. And we thought it might be powerful for them to get actual cash, but the clients have wanted a statement credit. So we've
Right.
changed that. It's an easier process. They now get a statement credit.
Okay. Excellent. So I want to go back to something you mentioned was your intake people are college educated.
Mm,
Who is doing the intake? I mean, you've already said it's not an attorney, and
mm-mm.
I have no reason to push back on that. But who are the people who are doing this? How long? How do you get them ready to go? And I think the follow up to that is how long do you let them be intake people?
Yeah, yeah. So great. All of those questions are great. So, at my law firm, I have both full-time in-house people, and then I have outsourced overflow. Now, the outsourced overflow happens to be a company that I own that people can use if they also want outsourced intake. It's really geared. It's maximized for family law. So people like personal injury lawyers have a different intake process than I think the consumer law attorneys like us. But they're college educated. They are either very empathetic and customer service driven, or they are more inherently sales oriented and competitive and personally like just go getters. And those people do very well too. It's one or the other. And both of those personalities are very different personalities, but they do both do very well in the intake role. Now, when are they done? They're done when they burn out. And for anybody who's had a nanny or anybody who has really listened to intake calls and watched their intake people, you'll know they always burn out. It's usually after about a year and a half, but it does depend on the individual. How do you know? Watch, listen to the calls. You will know when your people are checked out or burned out, when they simply have no more empathy to give to the caller on the other line because they've heard the story 500,000 times and they're over it. One of the things you can do to help your people from burning out is make sure that they get to be involved in the process, and then they get to be learning the whole time. So earlier, I didn't know this, and I made the mistake of just letting people do intake. One of the reasons I've made them family law advocates and I have them do the start to finish client advocacy is because now they get to have a little bit more payoff in the clients and what they're dealing with. They get to learn, they get to hear about what happened at court or what the outcome is, and now they're more vested in their jobs.
Interesting. Yeah, because I'd like one, you're not doing the same thing over and over and over again. So you get some variety there. But they're also, I mean, you're cross training them to, whether or not they want to be a paralegal or a lawyer or whatever their long term goal is, there are things that need to be done in the law firm, regardless of what your title is. And you're making sure you've got cross training doing something else there. So, I mean, would you call it like a feeder position to ultimately being a paralegal or something like that?
So it totally could be. I think like starting people in intake, I even like starting my attorneys on consultations before I start to give them a caseload. I think it's a fantastic way to start to learn the firm, to learn the different problems. People like your employees always want to know that they have upward mobility. That's so important to the generation of people that we have working for us, and maybe to just all humans now. And so being able to, so that they see upward mobility and the potential to stay and grow with your firm is crucial. And if people want to go on to being a legal assistant or paralegal, there's a clear path in the firm. If they want to go on to supervising and training and partner relationships and community outreach and more of that side of the law firm, there's that opportunity as well.
Awesome. So, I mean, I'm going to kind of close the loop on this. Your intake people, if you left them to just do intake for at 18 months, they're burning out plus or minus. So now that you've got them more integrated across the client lifecycle, I mean, you're doing it because it works, but what's the timeline? Is there burnout, or do they have enough kind of downtime that they're not getting burned out?
I think that I'm not seeing burnout at the same rates. I'm seeing more engagement. I also include them in, we have a weekly marketing meeting. They come. So being able to have more visibility, more human reaction in the firm, more connection to the firm. They also come to our weekly staff meetings. So they don't feel like they're on an island all by themselves, just listening to people's problems. That's really helped.
Right. And I mean, for me, I know it's rare that we have actual, problems that aren't financial one way or another for an estate planning practice. I mean, just the ups and downs. I deal with different problems. that's okay. So the burnout, I'm going to keep that on in mind, but it's not something I look at and is like, oh yeah, this person has $5 million they need to distribute. Boo hoo.
Right. Right.
Excellent. Well, Billie, we've already burned through most of half an hour. Uh, we could stay here and talk all day, but you've got other things to do, and so do I. I would start closing with, well, what's one practical thing listeners can do to start upgrading their intake? I mean, we figure out what your need is, but once you've got that, where should we be going?
Listen to your calls. Listen to your calls. That's the simplest way to figure out, do I like the way my firm sounds? Do I like the language people are using? Do they sound engaged? And one of the very best training tools for your intake people is to have them listen to their own calls.
I love that because you're going to hear not only what your people are doing, you're also going to hear what your actual clients are like, and it'll give you a chance to see you missed, you didn't pick up on this when they said XYZ.
Mm-hmm.
Next time, make sure you kind of listen for this, or, you got this. This was good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you picked up on that. I love that because it's not just here's a metric. It's, unfortunately, do more work.
Right.
Billie, this has been great. Where can we find out more about you and your outsourced intake folks and your training program?
Yeah, so there's a ton. So my website for lawyers is modernlawpractice.com. And there are online courses for you to help you hire intake people, train intake people, set up your intake program, measure KPIs, what technology do you need, how to do consultations. So I make all of my incoming people take that course, and then I do training on top of it. And if you feel stuck on training, go there for sure. If you want to outsource, there's also information on that website about how to outsource. And if you just Google my name, you can find me pretty much everywhere.
Billie, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, John. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, bye. Thanks so much for listening. You can find more info on us and get your free white paper on client service at 5starcounsel.com. You can get in touch with me at john@5starcounsel.com. If you enjoyed the podcast, please subscribe wherever fine podcasts are found and leave us a review wherever you can.